Welcome to Hindsight is Horrifying, the show where two seemingly fully grown adults look back on television and movies from their childhood and ask the question, how in the hell did our parents let us watch this?
Yeah.
I'm Jason Mitchell. I'm here with my co-host, Darth Jader. Say hello.
Hello, listeners.
And today on Season 1, Episode 1, our premiere show, we're going to be taking a look at one of the classic Nickelodeon-era cartoons, Rocko's Modern Life, which I can hear people cheering outside the window. There's a huge amount of nostalgia around this show. Here's the thing, though. I am an old man. I am almost 40, and so Rocko was sort of right at the point where I was kind of more watching, Hercules and Xena than Nickelodeon. So I'm going to hand it over to my co-host, and let her tell us a little bit more about this gem from, when did it premiered, 91?
I'd honestly have to look it up, but I just have the summation here. But it was definitely in the 90s, for sure.
Definitely a 90s show, yeah.
Absolutely.
And we've actually got it playing in the studio, which at some point we are going to, for those of you who decide to support us on Patreon, we are going to let people take a glimpse into the studio and watch what we are watching, sort of along with us.
And appreciate our twisted commentary on all of these wonderful programs that we remember from our childhoods.
Yes. And if you've never seen it, go get drunk, watch a few episodes, stay drunk, and then come back and listen to this show.
Yes, the animation will make you much less sick that way.
Yeah.
But before we get into the summation of Rocko, we are actually enjoying some delightful beers from a local brewery called Variant Brewing in Roswell. I'm drinking a raspberry lemon goza. And Jason, what do you have over there?
I have the Norcross Street IPA, and I learned today of the existence of the growler. I didn't know I knew what a growler was, but this is an absurdly huge can. I feel like as though a small child was drinking 7.3% alcohol beer.
Yeah, it's roughly the size of a small child, so maybe that's where that came from. But there is a growler, which is the larger glass jug that you can put beer into, but a crowler is a can. So that's where the C comes in. And you learned something today.
Yeah, and so this is from Roswell, right?
Yes, it's in smack in the middle of downtown Roswell, actually across from Canton Street, right next to Roswell City Hall. If you have a chance to go there, I highly recommend it. My friends, the Curlings, actually started this business, and they have been going like gangbusters. So if you enjoy very clever beer flavors, that is the place to be.
All right.
But to get into the Rocko's episodes, the Google summation of Rocko's Modern Life is pretty, cut and dry. It says, Rocko is a wallaby who has moved from his native Australia to the United States. But life in the United States isn't as idyllic as he had hoped it would be, for he is surrounded by annoying neighbors, tons of laundry, and life's issues in general. By Rocko's side to help him over the obstacles and through the challenges life throws at him are his best friend Heifer, a dim-witted bovine, his canine companion Spunky, and his neurotic buddy Filbert. So on this particular episode, we actually looked at the first and last episodes of the first season of Rocko's Modern Life. And part of what drew us to these particular episodes of the show were the blatantly adult humor titles for the episode. For instance, the first segment of the first episode, because as many of you know, but some of you might not, is the fact that Rocko is actually split into 2 episodes per showing. So you get 2 different stories in the same showing of an episode, technically. And the very first story in the first episode is called Carnival Knowledge / Sand in Your Navel, which are just delightfully inappropriate.
It is amazing that Nickelodeon, they had such a family-friendly image.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very, very interesting that they greenlit a show where the first story is called Carnival Knowledge. I understand this was at the point when Nickelodeon was trying to get more of a mature audience.
Yeah, and that's where like we started seeing the issue of not issue rather, but the ushering in of the SpongeBob era and a little more dicey entertainment. But it's funny because I found out a long time ago due to Clerks, the animated series, that a lot of times the network pushback is very specific. They have specific guidelines about, language that you can use, specific words, whatever the case may be, but sometimes things slip past the network. There was a joke, for instance, on Clerk the Animated Series where Randall's pulling apart a magazine and the pages are stuck together, and the network never caught on to it, so it aired on primetime television when it probably shouldn't have. But you never know what's going to get accepted and what isn't, honestly.
Well, and I wonder with this if the studio or if the network, what level of oversight were they giving while they were producing the show?
Right, because they tend to be more strict on some shows and not on others, depending on the time slot. And if it's a Saturday morning cartoon sort of a situation where they're pretty sure the parents aren't going to be paying attention while their children are watching this show, they may have just assumed, oh, it's a bunch of dumb kids, all this will just go over their heads, which I won't lie, I didn't catch up on a lot of this humor until I was older and rewatched the series. So
no, I mean, a joke like that, carnival knowledge, there is no way a kid is going to catch that joke unless it's a kid with a very unfortunate upbringing.
They're going to take it literally unless very much abused.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, Nickelodeon, they were going for what would eventually become sort of the Adult Swim audience.
Right.
Which Adult Swim's genius was this idea that parents would have a kid who wouldn't go to sleep, and so it's 2:00 in the morning, and they're watching cartoons with their kid to get them to go to sleep. Why not make it something that the parents like too?
That's how I discovered Space Ghost Coast to Coast, honestly.
Yeah. Aqua Teens, Space Ghost,
none of which
C-Lab.
None of which was intended for children, but it was just hoping that the children, like you said, would either knock out or whatever would happen. But... yeah, with this first episode, to give you guys a little bit of a synopsis, Rocko and Heifer actually venture to a local carnival, which, in a very adult kind of way, there are different scenarios that they go through and situations like, for instance, the entire concept of the carnival itself is a complete ripoff. All of the games are gypped and the rides are incredibly dangerous. They actually go on a log flume that... it seems like an actual sawmill. I mean, the ride is called the Sawmill, so I guess we should have known going in that it was going to be incredibly dangerous, but Rocko and Heifer actually almost die when a saw blade tries to cut their little log flume in half, so... Well,
and it's interesting watching this, as an adult, because there's so many things in this particular episode, and in all of them, that are just so obvious, like the fact that obviously... Rocko and Heifer are lovers. I mean, to me, that's just obvious.
Really? I don't get that vibe at all, so I want to hear the logic behind that one.
There isn't. It's just, well, I mean, Rocko, he's obviously the butch one, and Heifer is sort of the overweight effeminate,
Which is interesting because in every other aspect, Rocko is in charge of their relationship.
Oh, yeah,
for
he's
sure.
absolutely in charge.
He's the logical, sane adult one, but in every other aspect of Rocko's life, he's stepped on and just the obedient one in every other situation.
And I think it's clear that both of them probably, I think most of Heifer's previous boyfriends have been probably abusive. I think there's been some abuse.
It's very possible.
Past.
And he does have a very aggressive family, as we come to find in later episodes, because he was a bovine who was raised by wolves. So.
See, that is exactly the sort of thing that is, it's going to lead to relationship issues. And, I just think it is heartwarming to see that they've come together. And, of course, back then they couldn't get married or I don't think they could adopt in 91, but so it's a very progressive show. In so many ways.
Wow, from that perspective, it's light years ahead of its time. I never even would have considered that.
I mean, along with Rocko's obvious abuse of hardcore drugs.
Just the animation alone shows you that the animators themselves were abusing some sort of substance.
Well, these guys went on to do not all of them, but the co-creator and a lot of the other ones did SpongeBob, right?
To my knowledge, yes.
Yeah, which is the most tripped out, just messed up show.
Yeah,
in
SpongeBob
history.
is surprisingly metal for a cartoon.
Oh,
You wouldn't expect it out of
Yeah.
a little friendly sponge, but...
Yeah.
One of the things that we're actually watching the video, as Jason mentioned, and one of the most hilarious bits that's kind of an ongoing thing on the show is the beaver AMTs. So Rocko was actually just on a little go-kart in the bumper cars, and he got crashed into by every other bumper car in the track, and they just smash him to pieces. And the car is destroyed as well.
Which is similar to what's happened to him in his previous relationships.
I thought that was Heifer, not Rocko.
Oh, that was Rocko?
Yeah, Rocko was the one who got hit by the
sorry.
car. But they all smash into him, and then he and the car are both severely damaged. And the beaver EMTs come out with their hup, 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 and they come out with a little gurney. And instead of attending to Rocko, who's literally been flattened on the ground, they pick up the bumper car and take it away on the gurney.
Right.
So that's something that actually recurs in multiple episodes where they keep rescuing the wrong thing.
Which is probably also clearly showing his very, unsatisfactory relationship with beavers.
Oh my God. It got so real so quickly. But,
What? Beavers and wallabies wouldn't get along.
well, it's really funny because in the second episode, Heifer's adopted grandfather does mistake Rocko. He doesn't figure out that Rocko's a wallaby. He keeps calling him a beaver. And at one point, the grandfather officially announces, because they throw some dead deer or moose on the table for all of them to eat it. But the grandpa gets frustrated with Rocko, and he's like, "I say we eat the beavers." So it's just hidden gems all over the place with this show.
It's all trying to tell a story, a deep, deep story.
And then this great bit right now, because Rocko, he finally achieves something. The whole episode is literally about the carnival ripping him off and the dangerous rides. Like, there's even an elevator that's called the elevator to hell. And when it comes back up from hell, the devil himself tries to sneak out, and the carny is like, you get back in there, get back in there. But Rocko, toward the end of the episode, actually finally wins one of the games, which are all clearly rigged. And as they're leaving, he gets a prize, and everybody at the carnival actually stops, and they all gasp, and one of them literally says, "It's a miracle, somebody won one of the games." And then the big grand prize that he gets for finally winning a game is a Chinese finger trap.
So he leaves with bondage equipment.
Oh, no.
To restrained, you see. So it's very, there's a lot of layers here.
Yeah, they're working a lot of blue on
layers.
this show for sure.
Yeah. Well, in the elevator to hell, that's obviously a reference to Rocco's family being, fundamentalist Christians and not agreeing with his lifestyle.
100%. That's why you never see his relatives. They've abandoned him.
Yeah. What is the story? Is it ever, because I don't know, like Rocco's life?
I don't really recall ever seeing Rocko's family members. That being said, we've really only focused on the first and last episodes as of right now, but the intro speaks volumes, because part of the intro is when they start singing Rocko's Modern Life, the first thing that happens is this mother wallaby hops to the forefront of the screen and literally dumps Rocko out on the floor and then just hops away.
That's deep.
So she abandons him right out of the starting gate.
This is like a Werner Herzog thing.
Oh, God.
Rocko, who has been abandoned by his mother, forced to move to a land he does not know.
Oh, goodness.
Where he is unaccepted.
He's a foreign visitor in a foreign land. But he's got his little world going on with his dog Spunky, whose name in and of itself is just wildly inappropriate.
So again, though, we see this trend in cartoons where a wallaby has a pet dog.
Well, I mean, Mickey Mouse started that trend by having a pet dog.
Well,
so.
it just as with Mickey, it begs the question: is Rocko a super intelligent wallaby, or is his dog mentally retarded?
You've got to wonder, because we're actually the video has actually reached the second part of the first episode where Rocko goes to the beach, entitled "Sand in Your Navel." And right now Rocco's looking for parking, but one of the where one of the concepts is Rocko does take his dog Spunky to the beach with him, and at a certain point in the episode you see them trying to play fetch, but also on the beach there's a shark with a pet dog. and the shark throws a stick for the dog, and then the dog brings back a severed human leg, and the shark is just like, good boy, that's a good boy.
And so once again we see the symbolism. The dog hunting the man, and there's no humans, right?
Not that I'm aware of. It's mostly just animals.
Where did the human leg come from?
You don't know that it was a human leg. It could have been a monkey's leg, technically, but it does look like a human leg. So I'm not honestly sure.
Maybe this is a world where man has been hunted to extinction
by all the animals who finally rose up against us.
Yeah, and except for the obviously retarded dogs.
Well, you get a certain wasteland experience anyway, just especially from the beach episode where Rocko sees a beach on a postcard that's beautiful and pristine, and then he shows up and it's like a sewage plant, so maybe just the nuclear waste killed all the humans and then turned the animals humanoid. Who knows? And the only things that didn't evolve were the dogs.
That's always been my experience with beaches. Not the nuclear part, but I hate the beach. I hate it. I despise the beach. Yeah,
it's specific beaches because everybody wants to go to Panama City or everybody wants to go to Destin, and everyone and their mom is already there, so it's just so crowded.
There's also sand, which I hate.
You don't like having sand in your navel, Jason?
No.
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 Oh, and here's a wildly inappropriate moment that we're rolling up on right now is Rocko actually, he gets approached by this large hippopotamus lady.
Elderly.
Yeah, she seems a little elderly, and she asks him to butter her back, which I'm just going to leave that alone. But and she's so enormous that Rocko has to climb up on top of her head, and then he slides in between her cleavage. She screams at him and pelts him into the ocean, and he comes back with a buoy sticking out of his trunks, at which point a walrus approaches Rocko, and he goes, "Excuse me, my dear boy, you have a buoy in your pants." And it's just inappropriate after inappropriate.
Reminds me of 9th grade.
Oh, goodness.
Well, that's when this came out. It's because I watched it in 9th grade.
Oh, okay. I thought you had some really indecent tale to tell us regarding a buoy in your pants.
No. I mean, that was the year that I slept with that teacher, but other than that.
Oh, right. You were the kid in the news that year.
Yeah. No, we didn't have those teachers when I was a kid.
Oh, we did. They just, there was no social media, so it wasn't as easily accessible. All these horrifying stories that we see now.
You see, how long was I in school? I think I stopped being a student whenever I was like 25. So in 20 years of being in school, I think there were 2 teachers tops that were
a little iffy.
Yeah, they were on that in the area, but we didn't have them.
Well, that's good. You don't want that to be a rampant problem. You don't want it to be a problem at all, but you definitely don't want it to be a rampant one.
What's the problem? I mean, if I had a daughter, I'd feel totally different. But, having a son and seeing the pictures of some of these teachers. Sorry, are we off topic?
That's sexist. Good beer. I'm really glad you like it.
Beer.
Once again, Variant Brewing, my friends. Check it out.
And if I get pulled over, I only had one.
They only had one giant can of beer.
I only had one beer.
Technically, it was one. But, we just missed the part where the shark's dog brings back the human leg. And now Rocco's thrown a stick for Spunky, who the stick lands in the ocean. And Spunky gets swallowed by a giant fish. And Rocko jumps on it to get the fish to spit Spunky out onto the sand.
So the purple fish ended up spitting out Spunky.
Yes, that's exactly what happened.
I mean, I'm just describing what's happening.
No, and now again we see the recurring joke of the beavers because clearly the fish is incapacitated and Spunky, Rocco's giving him the Heimlich, but then the beavers come out, rescue the fish and put it on a gurney, but then throw it on a grill and cover it with lemon juice.
So the beavers are only interested in the purple fish.
The purple fish. And incapacitated cars. They seem really into incapacitated things.
Oh, and someone's about to get crabs. Well, just one crab.
The crab chases Spunky out of the ocean to the crab shack, and then it says something like, "Oh, my people," because it sees that its fellow crabs are being sold after they're dead, so it runs back into the water.
Now that's social commentary.
A little bit.
Obviously talking about the war in Iraq. No, wait, it hadn't happened yet. No, it wasn't. They're not talking about that.
I was about to say, this was far previous to that, so I'm not sure where you're getting that.
The Falklands War then. So what else was going on at the time?
Oh, God. And this brilliant joke right here. Rocco's dog, Spunky, has been swallowed by a pelican. And the pelican actually has a local racket where it's selling the fish that it catches to a fishmonger. So it's not eating. It's because Rocco's like, look, Spunky the majestic pelican as he feeds his children with the fish. And no, he's got a fishing racket. But the pelican steals Spunky since he's a small dog. And Rocco is chasing after them to go rescue his dog. And meanwhile, there's this tiny monkey building a sandcastle on the beach. And you are led to believe that Rocco's going to like stomp all over the sandcastle, but he doesn't. Then the monkey proceeds to take the sand, put it between two pieces of bread, and eat it because it's now a sandwich. And it's just that I never got that as a kid, but watching this, some of the jokes that they sneak in are wildly inappropriate, but others are just plain dad jokes.
Yeah, I was about to say this is where dad jokes come from.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I mean it's from watching shows like this that dads learn how to make dad jokes.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
because it just they
obviously this is what the hit BBC show Detectorists was based on.
Oh, the metal detecting bear
metal detecting
on the
bear.
beach. And he finds a wallaby and then runs away in horror for some reason. Because I don't see what's so scary about Rocco. But
Wallabies, are they marsupials?
yes.
They are marsupials.
Yeah, because like I said in the beginning of the show, Rocco's mother has him in her pouch and then she just splats him on the ground and leaves him for dead or whatever. But Rocco loses track of his dog, and now he's crying because he can't find Spunky.
She was probably a drug addict.
It's very possible.
I mean, that would explain the tooth deformity that Rocco has.
Yeah, Rocco's got teeth sticking out the side of his face.
I mean that.
Well, she is from Australia. That's where all the criminals were sent originally. So you never know.
Slam on Australia out of nowhere.
We've been talking about meth
That's
addiction.
it. There
and all
goes
this
our Australian audience. We didn't have one.
Good eye, mate. It was nice knowing you. But now we have a dogfish joke, which is great because Rocco does find Spunky at the fishmonger's blocked in ice, and the fishmonger won't let him have him unless he pays for him, and he said, I paid good money for that dog fish. And it's just another great dad joke that happens in this episode.
What does he have? Oh God.
Oh yeah, toward the end of the
Sand fleas?
episode. They're either sand fleas or mosquitoes, but because Spunky does get closed up in a block of ice, and the whole reason why they went to the beach in the first place was because it's sweltering hot outside and they want to get cool. But then Rocco winds up completely sunburned, and Spunky's nice and cool because he's in the block of ice. But Rocco says, well, Spunky, it's better than me completely sunburned. And he's got mosquitoes grilling burgers on his stomach.
It's interesting too, just watching the episode flipped over to the next episode, and in the intro, it's a very deliberate choice to have Rocco being beaten up by an anthropomorphic clock.
Actually, I made a note about that because
that is very specific.
Oh yeah, it's just time completely just beats him down.
Yeah, Rocco is dying. I think that's what he's battling. He knows
his own existentialism.
He's having his own existential crisis, because he knows, and my God, who is going to take care of his retarded boyfriend?
And his retarded dog, as you said.
Right.
Because apparently everyone has some sort of mental deficit around Rocco, so maybe that's his personal power trip where he's trying to keep people with mental deficits.
I think you're exactly
right. That he has to take care of.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Rocco craves being the hero and the caregiver.
Oh God!
But he knows that he's utterly incompetent. He can barely manage his own life. So
if he really is the child of a meth addict, as you were implying, it's very possible.
Whatever drug substance Australians were taking in the 90s, which was probably meth.
Foster's beer.
There's nothing wrong with...
It's very Australian.
This is very good beer. No, but I think that Rocco, as a character, there are a lot of interesting choices that the creators made. First of all, making him... a wallaby, making him Australian. I'd love to know what the thought process was behind, the whole show. Did they sit around and just think, well, we want a little cute, fuzzy animal, who, is the sort of classic life is against him sort of character, or, what were they thinking?
Whether there was some symbolism involved in the choice, or...
Yeah, I mean, especially seeing as this leads up to the whole SpongeBob era, where, frankly, I just don't care because I hate SpongeBob. I hate it.
And we just lost our SpongeBob
Good
crew, so bye, guys. But I don't know. I think there's kind of a relationship there as far as what you're talking about with SpongeBob versus, Rocko the Wallaby. They're both very unalarming animals and objects. Like, a sponge is not something that you ever consider anything but completely harmless. It's just something that you use to clean. So it's kind of funny that they've turned a sponge into such an upbeat, happy character.
Yeah.
But I mean, a wallaby is also very, not alarming animal. Like kangaroos, they can put a beating on you. But,
a kangaroo can take care of itself.
Yeah, but wallabies, they're just kind of the cute, cuddly version. So it might speak to how they're very common, kind of the everyman struggling against the everyday. That might be what it is.
I would have picked a monotreme, but, not everyone knows marsupials.
I was about to say, I'm not even sure what that is, Jason.
Well, no, I mean, it does actually sort of make sense because, a marsupial or a wallaby, even a full-grown, healthy wallaby is as unthreatening an animal as you're ever likely to find. So it is sort of a perfect everyman kind of character.
And I feel like they're fairly common in Australia, too, so that might be another part of the thought process. I guess we'll never know.
And Heifer's story is that he was raised by wolves.
Yes, so I think that's partly why Heifer is so all over the place, because he was obviously raised by animals that are...
Psychopathic wolves, too. Not just wolves. Let's be fair.
Yeah, well, what's really hysterical is that they are a family of wolves, and Heifer's mom's name is Virginia. So you get some good literary references along with the general insanity of this show.
Is he afraid of her?
That's the question.
Because
you'd have to read his play.
Does she know his dark secret? Does she refer to Rocko as his friend? You see, that's the question.
Well, the grandpa does refer to Rocko as the beaver, so that might be about as close as we're gonna get as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, I guess that might be a clue to the whole pitcher versus catcher question.
Yeah, we're really not sure who's the dominant being in that relationship.
We'll have a poll.
Oh goodness.
Who's the pitcher? Who's the catcher?
I think it will depend on a lot of different factors, given the fact that this is
this is obviously a snuff film. This segment. Oh, we're on a different episode.
I was about to say that's a totally different episode.
Sorry, we're referring to something you're not saying.
Yeah. So we might want to.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, looking back on it. And the show wasn't without some controversy. When it premiered, there were a lot of parents and parents groups, things like that, who did have a problem with it. This was in the Ren and Stimpy, or this was after Ren and Stimpy. It premiered after Ren and Stimpy.
I was about to say, if it was ever battling Ren and Stimpy, that would have been the main argument back in the day, because Ren and Stimpy, even as a kid, that show was just so obviously grotesque and nasty.
Well, and I think one of the things that separates this show, Ren and Stimpy is iconic, whether you like it or you hate it.
You still remember it. Like, if I start singing what rolls downstairs, a loner in pairs rolls over your neighbor's dog, everybody knows the log, log, log song.
Right. Rocko, I think, for better or for worse, and I know at the time it was pretty consistently compared to Ren and Stimpy. And a lot of people, I think, unfairly judged it because they said, well, it's like Ren and Stimpy, but it's not as,
it's not
edgy.
as racy.
It's not, But the fact is, it was still a show on Nickelodeon.
It is, and one of the things that I think unconsciously invites that comparison is the quality of animation. Because one of the things that people will tell you with cartoon shows in particular is sometimes the animation itself, without knowing the content, without getting to know the characters, they can be put off by the animation purely.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
And Ren and Stimpy's it's on a very similar level to Rocko as far as the animation purposes, especially when it comes to gross things happening. Like,
yeah, I think Ren and Stimpy has a lot more, I don't want to say stylized, but there was a lot more, Ren and Stimpy, you had the consistent use of a still image, a frame that would be a frozen frame
right.
with a lot of detail in it. But Rocko wasn't the point of it. Rocko was supposed to be a show that was a much more mainstream show that was a cartoon that would also appeal to adults.
Right.
And frankly, what's the easiest way to make a cartoon appeal to adults?
Is to make sure that the children want to watch it.
Right.
And part of it too is that you can really tell the difference between some adult cartoons like Family Guy, Bob's Burgers, Angry Beavers, like stuff like that. My measure of how adult it is versus how non-adult it is whether or not you remember it for the stories or whether you remember it for the humor. Because with Family Guy, you don't need to know what's happening in the plot. The plot is completely irrelevant. It's all about, cut to this bit, cut to that bit. Lois says something, Peter says something, then you cut all over the place. It's just mania. Yeah. Whereas with Rocko's Modern Life, I remember specific storylines. Like, this isn't an episode we're discussing right now, but they did a spoof on the Alfred Hitchcock movie Rear Window, where Rocko broke one of his legs, and so he was in a wheelchair, and so his sole entertainment was happening through his bedroom window.
Right.
And he thought Mr. Big Head or Mrs. Big Head, one of the big heads murdered the other big heads, so I remember that for the story, but I don't remember any of the jokes from it.
Right.
Like, I had to specifically go back as an adult and look at these episodes and say, oh, okay, that was a wildly inappropriate joke, or, oh, that was a pun that would have gone over my head when I was 7 or whatever it was.
Well, the whole concept of an episode based on Rear Window, I mean, I don't think there were too many kids who would have picked up on that, but most, especially in the early 90s, I think most grown-ups would have immediately recognized, oh, they're doing a Rear Window episode.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't value it for the fact that it was a Hitchcock knockoff back in the day. I had no idea, but I did specifically remember that story. Then going back as an adult and watching it, I was like, oh, that's clearly Rear Window. That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
But you just don't realize that when you're a kid. And just even some of the knockoff jokes that they have that are simpler, as an adult, you pick up on them right away. But as a child, it just floats right over your head because you're distracted by the mania, the physical content where they're punching each other or Heifer rolls down a hill or whatever's happening. You're just focused on kind of the bright colors and the animation as a kid, and you remember the stories more so than the actual jokes.
Yeah, and then, the cow falls down and goes boom.
Yeah.
And that's funny because it's funny, but again, it serves the purpose of, if mom or dad has to sit there with you or has to listen to this crap,
there might as well be some sort of benefit for them.
I mean, as a parent, to this day, my son is thank God, he is past the age of wanting to watch Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. To this day.
Oh, you don't like the wholesome entertainment?
No, it's not that. It's not that. I love wholesome entertainment. I have no problem with that. But that level of inane, just here's a block. The block goes on top of another block. This is a color red thing,
Right.
That level of
Einstein level videotapes for children.
If I hear the Mickey Mouse theme song, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse theme song, I want to vomit. And I'm not making that up. I physically feel like throwing up, because when my kid was young, thousands of times.
All he wanted to watch.
Over and over. And there was nothing about it that would ever make me want to sit and watch it with him, But then all of a sudden there's this whole other world of shows that are, yes, they're for kids, but they know that mom and dad has got to sit through this crap also.
Right.
And I think there's a debt of gratitude that is owed to shows like this.
Oh, absolutely.
For establishing the whole idea that, hey, cartoons can be fun for grown-ups too.
Well, and going back to the whole Ren and Stimpy argument where people were trying to compare Rocko's Modern Life to Ren and Stimpy, another measurement of just how adult or non-adult the content is, like I said, most children remember the stories behind it as opposed to the adult humor, but then it's all about subtlety. Yeah. For instance, Rocko's Modern Life was subtle enough that I didn't realize that the show was being gross sometimes.
Yeah.
With Ren and Stimpy, it was painfully obvious from the first time I ever watched it in my single digits. Like,
agreed. And actually, in that respect, I think it's a superior show, in my opinion, because having the jokes that are hidden in the background sort of weaved in there.
Yeah, it's like an ornate tapestry as opposed to just this crude,
it's
obscene
not a fart joke.
Foghorn. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, and that, I think, is sort of it begs the question, is something like Ren and Stimpy so iconic and memorable only because it's memorable, because it just had a lot of gross, squishy fart jokes.
It's just unforgettable because of how grotesque it was at times.
Right.
Like, I remember I didn't get in trouble, but it was one of those moments where I didn't realize what I was singing, because they had all those fake jingles on Ren and Stimpy, like the log song, but they also had a song about varicose veins. And I was singing that song when I was about 7 years old, and I was just out like at the mall or somewhere in public with my mom, and she was like, no, you can't sing that in public.
Right.
That's not acceptable. Don't do that.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what I was singing as a child, but
Which, of course, immediately makes you just want to know, well, wait a minute.
well, what are varicose
what's wrong
veins?
with that?
I don't.
What is that?
Because they clearly show it too. I do clearly remember them doing that fake advert on the Ren and Stimpy show, but it just never occurred to me that it was a bad thing or something inappropriate
No.
that you shouldn't discuss in public.
So I guess, bringing it all back around, the fundamental question that I think has to be asked anytime you look back on a show, a movie, anything from your childhood, does it hold up? And that doesn't mean, am I going to sit and watch it again like I watched it when I was a kid? That's not the threshold, because nothing's going to make that.
No, because as an adult, too, you have a certain intolerance, like what you were saying with Mickey Mouse, and I do remember as a kid, I was watching Hey Arnold back to back to back, and eventually my mom was like, okay, enough, we've got to switch it to something else.
God.
Because just the repetitive nature of it, just as an adult, will drive you crazy.
I mean, I subjected my parents to Hey Dude.
Oh, goodness.
No one remembers Hey Dude.
Oh, it was the less popular, what was it called? The Camp Onawana show.
Yeah, it was the...
I can't remember what that show was called, though.
It was like kind of the first tween drama, soap opera.
On a ranch, of all places.
Yeah. You know, but I guess, when you say, does it hold up? I mean, okay, if I go back and I watch, and I did this a few years ago, I watched an episode of Alf. Alf, when I was a kid, was like my favorite show.
Sure.
It made me laugh until I hurt myself.
In case you didn't know that Jason was almost 40. Yeah,
Yes.
Alf was definitely his favorite show growing up.
Watching it again, it is so awful. It is so terrible.
It's
and
just
not
campy
funny.
enough.
It's just, I can't handle this, man. But on the flip side, if you watch something like what's a show that holds up?
A kid's show or just any show?
Anything from that era, anything from a long time ago that you watch today and you go, yeah, this is still.
It's probably they're probably really obvious references
Kids
here,
in the
but I would
Hall?
say, Kids in the Hall if we're talking Alf era, that was a little before my time.
Alf.
If I'm talking my time, like even just regular comedies for adults, I would say Seinfeld holds up. Obviously,
Oh, yeah. Seinfeld is
Friends, despite the fact that it got a little loopy in the later years, like the characters became a little too caricaturous of themselves.
Yeah.
It did go a little off the rails as far as that, but I think Friends holds up as specifically the early seasons when they're talking about the stuff that they're going through, relationships and all that. It's still very universally accepted. Like, you have kids these days, honestly, because I think her name is Bo Derek, the supermodel, the Australian supermodel.
Yeah.
She dated Joey in one of the later seasons. And she didn't realize, I read an article, she didn't realize how popular Friends was in America. And she didn't know what a big deal it was. And to this day, because actually I saw another article today, it was 23 years ago today that Ross and Rachel had their first kiss on Friends. Aw, cue the obligatory cute moment.
I was the guy just going, when does Seinfeld come on?
I'll sit through this, but But
although I did have a crush on Courtney Cox.
Who didn't?
Big,
Every boy
not
loved
a
Courtney
Jennifer
Cox.
Aniston. Most of my friends were Jennifer Aniston.
See, what I want to hear, I want to know who the Lisa Kudrow fans were. I want to know the guys who were in love with Lisa Kudrow.
They were there.
Oh no, I'm sure she was one of those like, yeah, I mean if the opportunity struck, but she wasn't the main heartthrob for a lot of guys.
I will tell you this as a teen ish. Was I in my 20s when that show went off the air? I don't remember.
I would have been in about middle school, so that's about right.
Lisa Kudrow was not. She was number 3 of 3.
Well, for me. Sure. I think that's the case.
But as a man of almost 40, if I watch that show, the only one that I wouldn't murder would be Lisa Kudrow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
See, that's why it's funny how your perspective on those kind of shows changes.
Oh, totally.
For me, Ross has always been 3 of 3, and actually negative like 20 of 3 because I was never a big fan of Ross. He was always so whiny and terrible. I always thought Chandler was the cutest. And Joey was just kind of dumb, and I couldn't get over that, even though he was pretty.
I would agree with that lineup.
Yeah, I'd go Chandler, Joey, Ross.
Oh, yeah, I did Chandler before any of the rest.
Ross only in a deserted island situation where I have to like help him repopulate the earth, and even then, I'd have my hesitation about it.
Me too, but I'd be skeptical if he proposed that. I don't think that would work. But no. How the hell did we? So it holds up.
But yeah, that's the point, is that it does hold up as a show, but it's your perspective changes on it just like it does with a show like Rocko's Modern Life, because you come to appreciate. Because I was allowed to watch Friends when I was probably too young to be watching Friends as well.
Yeah, Friends. I mean, it was. I mean, Friends was. It had its share of controversy. Not that much.
Oh really, yeah, like going back to Clerks, the animated series. Friends also had a cookbook where the pages were stuck together, and Joey was like, Chandler, thinking that Chandler was at fault for that. And it's just like the stuff that they got away with on primetime television is amazing to me.
Hey, go back and watch The Golden Girls.
Oh, Lord.
That show's filthy. It's old women being filthy.
B. Arthur is the most savage person in all of history.
Well, B. Arthur, she was legitimately not just a really, really good actress. Like, she was one of those classic show business, no nonsense.
Like, I did this my entire life. I came up in theater. Very, very serious actresses.
I know what I'm doing. I was in the Star Wars Christmas special.
Which...
So you listen. I would propose a scale.
Oh God!
From it doesn't hold up at all to it absolutely holds up today. And I'm a big fan of this. I do this scale thing. In fact, I like to do impressions, and I have a scale for how easy it is to do an impression of someone versus how hard it is, which is Bill Clinton is all the way on the easiest side, because everyone on the planet can do a Bill Clinton impression.
Yeah, kind of the Matthew McConaughey, Bill Clinton sort of country voice. Yeah.
So Bill Clinton's on one side, and Christopher Walken is on the other.
Oh, I've got you on Christopher Walken.
You have to admit, it's like tough.
It's very specific. Like, that's the thing with impressions, is that it's very specifically about cadence. It's not always necessarily about hitting the exact pitch. It's very much about it's very much about,
that's why I tried to have Jay Moore nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, because of his ability to impersonate Christopher Walken.
The man can really do a great Christopher Walken. If you haven't YouTubed that, you should.
So, as there is in my world, which is a colorful, sparkly place, the Clinton Walken scale for impressionable ability.
That's the official trademark name, people. No copying.
That's mine. I invented that. I think that we need to, and our audience can help us with this.
Absolutely.
I would say sort of tentatively the ALF news radio scale for does it hold up?
I don't think news radio is going to register with a lot of our listeners, so we might want to find something a little more relatable. I don't want to
live in this world. That's the greatest show ever.
I'm not saying it isn't, but it's also a very select group of people who know what news radio is. So let's say the Alf to Seinfeld scale.
Yeah, that you're absolutely right.
Much more relatable.
No, you're
I
totally
feel.
right. Yeah, Seinfeld in 2,000 years, when we've evolved past having feet
And they've had to choose one single comedy to bring with them into the future. Yeah. Seinfeld will be
all their food will be taken in pill form.
It'll be a very Rick and Morty universe.
But they will still watch Seinfeld.
So much has changed, but so much has stayed the same.
Yeah. The only words in the language will be, sponge-worthy and,
And what's the cat say on Rick and Morty all the time?
Oh,
squanch. Squanchy. Yeah, squanch. When everything's squanchy and all food is in pill form.
Exactly.
And you just say whatever's in your squanch.
Okay, so, I think tentatively we could say the Alf Seinfeld scale.
Absolutely. That's our official scale, trademarked.
Yeah. So, on that scale, where would you put Rocko's Modern Life?
Is there a midpoint on this scale? That's what I have to ask, because
this might actually be the midpoint.
That's what I'm asking, because it might be smack in the middle, because I appreciate it as an adult and it stands up, but for the reason that I don't appreciate it the same way that I used to.
Absolutely. I think you're right, because like Seinfeld, I would go out of my way to watch Seinfeld today.
Same. Like, I watch it on Hulu still, and the thing is, Seinfeld was a complete flip-flop for me, but in a very different way. For instance, when I was a kid, when Seinfeld was on, I was too young to really appreciate that humor as well.
Right. Yeah.
But it was very obviously, like, dry adult humor. It was like when your mom runs into her best friend at the grocery store and they talk for an hour, and you're just like, when is this going to be over?
Yes.
Because when you're a young kid, that's what Seinfeld feels like. But then when you're an adult... Because what I used to tell myself is, I will never relate to Seinfeld. I will never relate to Seinfeld, because that means I'm a boring-ass adult. That's what's happened.
And then all of a sudden...
Bam. You were just like, I don't like people touching my soap either. And it's just, oh, man.
It's just one square.
I have a bubble of space. Do not enter it. That's sort of, quote-unquote, adult mentality.
It was the moops.
Oh, God.
The moops.
And not the desire to not move. You move basically when it's your very last resort. Like.
Yeah. Well, and it helps that I have a very close friend who basically is Seinfeld.
Oh, well.
To the point of just, it's ridiculous.
That'll make a big difference.
Yeah. No, but I agree with you. And I think there are shows like Rocko, which it's sort of like I walk into the room, or I'm at the car dealership.
Oh, goodness.
Waiting on my car to get fixed.
Yes.
And the TV is on. And look, they're playing Rocko. I'm not going to go through the effort to change the channel.
I'll sit there and watch it. It's if it comes, and it's one of those things that comes on the TV, you're like, I should watch this for nostalgia's sake, if for no other reason.
Right.
It's not like a Wizard of Oz level thing where it's like, oh, I'm excited because this came on the TV.
Yeah.
But
I'm going to put in Dark Side and get stoned. It'll be just like college again. I'm so nostalgic.
Oh, goodness. But yeah, I would say, honestly, Rocko is like a perfect midpoint between Alf and Seinfeld, because it does have the kitschiness of children's programming and the colors and the warped animation and the tackiness, the vivid colors that keep a child's attention span. But then as an adult, you watch it and you're like, wow, this was a lot more subtle than I ever gave it credit for, because it does not present as a subtle show at all.
Right.
It's like being on an acid trip with all the different colors and the chaos of the physical humor. It's crazy.
This then is an historic or ahistoric?
Ahistoric.
Ahistoric. Unless I'm Cockney, it would be ahistoric.
Yes.
Anyway.
There's no N in front of the H sound.
That was the worst Cockney.
The English major in me is raging right now.
So, as an English major, would you support my thesis that the death penalty should be applied to anyone who doesn't use the Oxford comma?
Yes, because you can take my Oxford comma when you pry it from my cold, dead, comma, and lifeless hands.
And if anybody out there doesn't use the Oxford comma,
stop listening immediately.
Yeah, just go away, because I don't...
Get an education.
Yeah.
Now.
So I think today is a historic day, because
Beautiful.
we have established not only the boundaries of the did it hold up scale.
Yes.
But the midpoint,
which usually just gets lost in a sea of gray, but we've found it. There's Alf, there's Rocko, then there's Seinfeld.
And this is what I do, because this will be the last thing I say before because I know we're bumping up against time here, but because every single thing, my theory is that everything that happens in our lives that is totally pointless can be quantified, scientifically quantified. I have actually quantified jealousy.
So you're saying that everything happens for a reason? in a more simplistic way.
Well, okay. Jealousy can be measured. I've come up with a unit. I call it the jelly.
Well, yeah. What else are you going to call it, Jason?
1 jelly. Okay. What is, because, you do this with, like, what is 1 degree? What is 1 meter? Science has all these standards.
I think I'm already with you on this. Like, 1 jelly is, oh, I love those shoes. Soup's jelly.
1 jelly is the feeling you feel when at a restaurant with a friend and you are deciding between 2 entrees, and after placing your order, or your friend ordered the other thing,
you want what they had.
You look at that and you think, I wish I would have gotten that.
Yep.
That is exactly 1 jelly.
Okay, what's the maximum amount of jellies? I see we're still scoping out this theory.
I don't know that there is a theoretical limit.
Okay.
It's not like speed of light where you run into...
What about... Okay, we can go...
David Beckham?
No, I would say, like, if we were going extreme, we would say if 1 jelly is the jealousy over a plate of food, then the ultimate jelly is Othello.
Yeah.
Where you're willing to murder your spouse over something.
Oh, come on. That's not...
It happens all the time.
Be fair. That's not that extreme. I'm not suggesting it, mind you. I'm just saying that people do that.
He thinks your fingers have been all over Casio's keyboard, so Tina Turner, we got to private dance it out of here.
And on that spousally abusive note, thank you. Those of you who are still listening, thank you for listening to the premiere episode of Hindsight is, are we going to say horrible or horrifying?
Horrifying, I think.
Horrifying. Hindsight is horrifying, where we look back at some of the fondest memories of your youth and correctly change your perspective and actually let you understand that they were quite dreadful and terrible, and you should feel bad.
So goodbye to Australia and goodbye to whoever.
Sorry, Australia.
we apologize, but we know you're not listening anymore anyway.
They're good sports. They'll show up, punch one of us in the face, and then it all will be forgiven.
Well, I mean, they should like us just right out of the starting gate because they have a song about tying your wallaby down, and we're doing a show about a wallaby. So,
yeah, see?
Hey, we're very international in our entertainment.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Well, listeners, thanks for joining us. Listen next time on Hindsight is Horrifying.